Thank you for being here present. And a round of applause. We still have this segment where we have these distinguished guests, and we'll have an opportunity to see the awards of 2021 in the maritime sector. In order to close this round of conferences, we're going to see the panel, the sustainable factor in the port industry. This is an important topic for this sector in order to share, to make an analysis and to share the experience. So I would like to give the floor to Domingo, to Celeste Gutiérrez, Valdovinos, Assistant Planning Manager, and Lázaro Cárdenas, Erik van Eekelen, Director of Environmental Engineer of Oord, and Patricio Montoya Sánchez, Head of Maritime Services for Latin America of AMBIPAR Response. As moderator, we have Mr. Juan Duarte, founding partner of Duarte Morales of the Colombian Consultancy of Regional Projects, to whom I'm giving the floor.
Buenas tardes para todos, muchas gracias.
Good afternoon. At the end, we'll give an award to the loyal attendees. We're going to have a quick dynamic, and that is that we want a round of applause with much noise in order for those outside to think that there is something great happening.
Muy bien.
That's great. If after this they will not join us, then there is no future. We're going to talk about a very important topic, which is going to be part of the agenda, or which is already part of the agenda, will continue being part of the agenda by 2030, is the sustainable factor of the port industry. Many have asked if the sustainable factor is going to talk only about the environmental aspect, but that's not the case. We're going to listen to some great interventions on how to use natural resources in order to build sustainability, how to prevent and to manage risk in order to avoid greater complexities when it comes to the environment, and how to manage port terminals under the current law. We'll give the floor to Domingo Chinea. He has a master's degree in port management of the University of Antwerp in Belgium. So he is the current CEO of the Regional Port Society of Santa Marta. So you have the floor, Domingo. Well, thank you very much, and I would like to thank the organizers, APA, and all those who have made this event possible. And given that we are the last ones to address you, I mean, we still have much desire to do things and to address you. And it is very important to talk about the environmental topic in the ports. We always talk about port efficiency, about ships, and I think that today we are going to speak about the environmental topic. Well, here we are going to talk about some topics you are familiar with. Where are we heading to? This is our presentation. Who are we? The environmental topics in our port. We are a multi-purpose port with containers, terminal liquid, terminal bulk, terminal cold terminal, which we operate under very demanding standards. And we operate general cargo, rolling cargo. We are a multi-purpose port. And I think that at this moment we are doing great because moving from container cargo to loose cargo, it has been great, and And then we are back to the results of 2019. As you all know, climate change is here to stay. There are no alternatives, and that's a reality we're all familiar with. Santa Marta is a port with many benefits when it comes to the environment. It is one of the only ports in the world where it doesn't rain too much. It's a dry weather, lost time because of rainfall is very small. It's one of the places in the world with low levels of corrosion. There are many theories why we do not have high levels of corrosion. You can see containers, bulk, and we also do offshore in Pier number 5, and we are a multi-purpose port, and we even have a coal terminal. These are all the programs required by authorities, and we are very happy that they have all these demanding requirements. And the idea is that we all have to comply with them if we want to operate, because if not, we are going to lose the concession. So it's not take it or leave it. It's something that you have to do. These are the programs on air, maritime, the land. In the port, there is a forestry reserve, and we also have coral reefs. And that is something that we have compared our legislation with that of other countries, and we see that the environmental legislation is very strict for the company, and it's mandatory to comply with this legislation. And ANLA is auditing us, also the district authority and the state authority. So we are a company with a lot of surveillance, which is the case for all the concessions. So we are highly supervised, and we are supervised by the competent authority and also the superintendency. So this is a company that needs to comply with many things, and we feel very happy about it. So it's for the good of the country, it's for the good of the sector and of the system. That's why we really need to comply with our commitments. And the sustainable factor, I mean, we all think about this topic. Here we have the Sustainable Development Goals, and this is at the UN level, and I think that it's amazing that we all think the same way. We recover most of the water. This is a city that has many water supply problems, and we use the recycled or recovered waters. Port and sustainable development, as we already said, this is part of our DNA, of our policies, of our daily work. And we have a responsible operation. We have a coal operation which is audited every 6 months. We are not informed about the audit, and the coal operation in the country is highly controlled, highly supervised, and we need to meet all the requirements. Even these equipments, sweeping equipment, need to have a GPS because they even check how many hours per day they work. And in the case of waste that needs to be sent to the mine, and that's a very complex process, so this is not lost along the way. The same thing with air quality. We had to install stations for air control in the port and outside the port. And also the operation and the marine environment, we have to clean clean underground, underwater, and we have that 50% of the port is a forestry reserve, and we planted more than 1,600 trees last year. From the personal standpoint, I think that not only the ports are going to sort out the problem of climate change, we need the participation of authorities, the government, and also the private sector. These are pictures which have been published. I have not taken those pictures. And that's an example of any city in any of our countries. This is the reality. You can visit any city and you see that solid waste treatment in the cities and most of port cities encounter many difficulties and deficiencies. And the water basins, they end up being the place where all these waste are collected. If you make a study of the Magdalena River and you study how many municipalities dumped their used waters in the river, you're going to be surprised about it. If you test the quality of the water of many rivers, you're also going to be surprised with that. And our city, which is a beautiful city, it is it's a city that has worked on this topic. It is not one of the worst. For example, Manzanares River, these are pictures that have been published. The water issue is very severe. The drainage of used waters and of the rain. It's as you see it there, the pollution problem is similar. So any city with a large port in our country, in our region, we see that the ports have made quite a progress, but the cities do not progress the same way when it comes to the environment. I know that some people are going to say that that's not part of the port, that that's not our responsibility, but I do not see it like that. I see it as the only solution in order to stop the effects of climate change. We have to work as a team to attain this in order to minimize the effects. As good neighbors of the city, we have to work with the city. We have a foundation that works with the city, and I think that education is of paramount importance. If we do not educate our children that when we have the rainy season, they cannot throw things in those streams, that you have to respect neighbors, that the water basins are not a place to collect garbage. If we do not educate them, it is going to be useless. Hence, for us, education is very important. We need to educate children, we need to educate youth, we need to put in place social programs. How do we see the future? The business part, the legal part, already established and regulated. I think that we are indeed complying with that. Who is not complying with that? Those that are not properly established or incorporated, and I think they're really damaging the environment. We all have to work to reverse this situation. And another pillar that is very important for us is the educational topic. We have to educate the new generations. And all the businessmen here and those that are absent must really educate the new generations in the protection of the environment. Otherwise, it is going to be very difficult to get these outcomes. These are not small cities. These are cities of 500,000 inhabitants, and we have to work with the mayor's offices, governor's offices, the national government, and private companies if we want to solve the environmental-related topic. Thank you very much.
Domingo, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Domingo. Clear rules, strict protocols, awareness, education. Those are the messages conveyed by Domingo Chinea from the port of Santa Marta. You see, we have more people in the room. So we are going to have a drawing of $1,000 at the end to see who is the attendee with more enthusiasm. Now, a round of applause. Let's welcome Celeste Gutiérrez, a computer engineer of the Institute Lázaro Cárdenas, at present leading auditor in ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and development manager of the port management of Lázaro Cárdenas. So a round of applause. So you're going to participate in the drawing of $1,000.
Pues buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here in such an important event. I would like to thank APA for allowing me to share information about the Mexican port, Lázaro Cárdenas. The name of the presentation is Sustainable Infrastructure in Lázaro Cárdenas. In Mexico, the national port system has 102 ports, and it has 15 maritime terminals that are strategically located on the Pacific Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean Sea. Within those ports, we have the Lázaro Cárdenas port, which is located in the mouth of the Valses River on the Mexican side. So this is a young port. It was built in 1974, and it started as an industrial port, and its construction was for the steel industry of Lázaro Cárdenas. Today, we are one of the main ports of the country, together with Altamira, Veracruz, and Manzanillo.
Last year, the year of pandemic, we ranked second in commercial cargo movement, leading management of mineral bulk, and ranking first with more than 9 million tons. As to containerized cargo, we operate 1 million TEUs, and we were leaders in the Mexican Pacific by operating 351,000 units of automobile cargo. In early 1990s, Lázaro Cárdenas was an entirely industrial port. We had very little national projection, and almost nobody knew about its existence. However, as a result of the reforms and the creation of the Ports Act in 1993, planning of the port became flexible and resulted in a more dynamic plan. The master development plans were implemented, which consisted in balancing the needs of our clients with the development plans to allow an orderly and efficient growth. So the purpose of the port was diversifying the cargo, mainly the containerized cargo and automotive cargo, which at that time had greater growth. This is where we started our second vocation, or our commercial vocation. The result of this change in strategy was quickly reflected in having the interest of the company Hutchinson's Port Holdings to operate a specialized terminal, which became true in 2007 with investments of $268 million. Presently, Hutchinson Port Holdings, as APM, have their own specialized container port or terminal, which have the capacity to operate up to 3 million TEUs. One of the advantages Lázaro Cárdenas Port has is the extension of its land. It has more than 820 hectares divided into water and ground. On the water side, we have the basins, canals, and the berthing position. Channels are 17 meters long, or the access channel is 17 meter longs. And we can receive very large ships. The SEC Amsterdam, for instance, with 367 meters length, we received last year. The Isla de En Medio is the southern part of the ground or the land side, and the Isla de Cayacal is the northern part where we have coastal trade. No, Isla del Medio has the coastal trade, and for Isla de Cayacal, we have the foreign trade cargo, and where we find the largest terminals. We have a coal terminal with 115 hectares, a specialized car with 52 hectares, and the container terminals each has an extension of 102 hectares. Another advantage of the port is that we have more than 800 hectares for new business development. Its growth is entirely different to the growth of the city. Presently, we have 15 port facilities. One can say it's a specialized port, provided that out of these 15, 10 are specialized terminals. And we have 3 multiple-use terminals and 2 facilities for cargo handling. Each of these facilities has a railway school or a station to move the cargo through the Kansas City Railway. Together, all of these terminals can operate up to 56 million tons, which is the full capacity of the port. As to our business lines, we're known for moving mineral bulks, oil fuel, non-oil fuels, general cargo, other liquids, vehicles, and agricultural bulks. Lázaro Cárdenas also seeks to use this infrastructure to help mitigate the environmental impacts we will have with our new environment. For this and consolidating modernity of the port, we have a control tower for maritime transit, which is strategically located across the main axis, the main channel. It is 38 meters high, and its visibility is 360 degrees. This tower has a rainwater collection system that allows us to water the gardens. Within Mexican infrastructure, we had a drawbridge called the Albatross Bridge, which purpose is to join the 2 islands, the Isla del Medio with Isla Cayacal, to connect them directly to the Siglo XXI highway. In addition to maintaining balance the operation of these 2 islands, it also prevents the car transportation to cross the city, reducing by 7 kilometers the distance to be covered and thus reducing atmospheric emissions. We have a logistics area for car transportation. There's control for entry and departure of trucks, thus avoiding congestion. And also we measure the times of each of the terminals in such a way that the time of entry of each vehicle is recorded. The time it stays within the terminal is measured until its departure from customs. On average, we have a service time of 1 hour, 59 minutes. We have a port operating system, SOP, which was implemented in 2010 and has been continuously improved. This SOP is for all the proceedings regarding infrastructure, and all the logistics agents use it. Customs, port authorities, the terminals themselves, and other agencies. This SOP, we are working on implementing a similar system to this at each of the ports in the rest of Mexico. We also have a corporate business and a business building, which is the offices for all the main players at the port. We use solar light, we have automated systems, and we have temperature control to help us minimize the use of electrical energy. Considering the importance of solar power, at Lázaro Cárdenas we have 4 modules of solar panels, which are located mainly in the areas of greater consumption, at the control center, at the emergency centers, at the corporate building, and at the Albatross Bridge. Together, these modules can generate up to 3 million kilowatts per year, which is equivalent to 9,800 homes. We are presently in the process of installing a module of solar panels, an additional module. Regarding protection of the environment, we have an environmental protection area that extends for 138 hectares for flora and fauna. Also complying with the applicable environmental regulations, we have 14 treatment plants within the port facilities, which are monitored on a monthly basis to ensure compliance with the regulations. And in addition, each concession holder needs to have its own processing plant, comply with the regulation, and in support of the port community, we assist the city's water treatment system. Treated water at these plants within the port facilities passes through a regeneration process in such a way that it can reach the necessary quality to be used for water spraying. We have drop by drop and spray watering. We have 30,000. We can reproduce up to 30,000 native plants like mangrove, frijolillo, cedar, oak, among others. One of the certifications that we have, ISO, is 9001, which is quality. We have 14,000 quality, which is environmental, 45,000, which is safety and occupational health. We are also certified ISO 27000, which is information, ISO 28000, security in the supply chain, and we're also certified as a clean port and the EcoPort certification. One of the main objectives of the port is not only involving the port community to benefit the environment, but also to involve society in general. So actions are taken together with the community, such as reforestation campaigns. In these campaigns, we reforested more than 36,000 trees within and outside the port facilities, and we've donated more than 32,600 plants. We've also had cleaning campaigns, especially of the Balsas River, and we have a program called Puerto Ciudad, where we hold marathons and half marathons inside the port facilities, where the community can come to the port, run their marathon, look at the operation. They receive a talk about the environment to raise environmental awareness. And in addition to this, we're also generating a sense of belonging towards the port. With these actions, we've also gotten the concession holders to embark and support the environmental plans and activities. And we have 3 that are in the process of certification, and 10 of them are already certified. This shows you the importance that we give to the environment, to environmental protection at Puerto Lázaro Cárdenas. I would now say goodbye to you by showing you a short video of our port. Thank you very much.
Todo tiene un ritmo.
Everything has a pace, a rhythm, a cadence, a tone, and a cycle. To adopt this pace is fundamental to achieve our goals. The goals are the beam that leads us in the right direction. At Lázaro Cárdenas Port, in addition to goals, we establish plans, coordinate efforts, develop objectives, and build better living conditions with passionate people who love logistics. Port operations is a big challenge, implies dexterity to operate all the machinery, operate the terminals, dispatch thousands of goods through an extensive customs facility. But today it is a reality that vibrates thanks to the strength and faith of our people and all those who enable for Megaport Lázaro Cárdenas to be the big logistics platform of Mexico. Working for close to 5 decades in consolidating a model of excellency, profiting of its privileged location for the commercial exchange with Asia, we expand our influence to the most important ports in North, Central, South America, in Europe. This makes us a driver of global progress, connecting imports and exports to more than 100 ports all over the world. Large territorial reserves for new projects, an eco-friendly port and socially responsible mega terminals with areas for opportunity in various business lines and with specialized infrastructure for containerized cargo, general cargo, vehicles, mineral bulks, agricultural bulk and fluids. And as part of our most recent projects, the modernization of a terminal for specialized handling of coal, with an extensive railway system and roadway with the sense of transferring what's most important. We are a very effective change in the national supply chain. We connect with the main logistics nodes and consumption centers in the country. We optimize dispatch times thanks to our logistics services, and also a control for entry and departure of all vehicles, ground vehicles. Here's where one feels a clean, reliable operation. We maintain and care for the order of our operations through our maritime traffic control system. Thanks to state-of-the-art technology, we control entry and departure of all vessels, achieving a brand of trust in containers and automobiles. Each shipment reaches the berths without issues, as well as the access channels and navigation channel, in addition to delivering the goods through measuring times of transport by car, adding efforts with qualified people that are highly experienced with certainty, security, and efficiency in our operations. Our corporate business center is this medullary sector of the operations, both administrative as technical, of the port, strategic space where come together, where we meet with our commercial partners and business allies. A highly qualified and trained human team answers the challenges of global trade, distinguishing us as a highly competitive port. When your goods are dispatched via this port, they promote high-impact investments for Mexico and our region. We are an inclusive port. We worry about the common good of the families, creating dignified spaces for social and cultural coexistence. All of this is possible thanks to thousands of individuals who daily organize, control, and supervise, who attend to and cooperate so that while you do business, we make logistics come to life. One honorable past and a present that translates into evolution connects us to a promising future for those who are here, the new generations. For them and for you, our terminals and facilities exist. Shipping lines, customs agents, freight forwarders, carriers, railway, service providers, and human capital that all work towards a common purpose, the development of Mexico and the world. We are a young port. Celeste, thank you very much to you and the Lázaro Cárdenas Port planning, diversification, and profiting and good use of natural resources. Because learning and fun at AAPA Latino do not end here. Directly from the Netherlands, I have brought our international component on a very spectacular topic, which is building with nature. Let's welcome Erik van Eekelen, civil engineer from the Technological University of, with a master's degree in dynamic behavior of dredging, and the director of the environmental engineering at Van Oord. You're welcome to the floor, Erik.
Muchas gracias, Juan. On the APA, I'm humbled that I, as an environmental engineer, can here today speak to you about a topic that comes really from my heart. It's about building with nature, and I would really like to tempt you to think about building with nature in your port development. And the main reason why I'm doing that is as what we've seen in the past 2 days in all of these ports. Ports are located in beautiful places. It's where the land meets the sea. It's at the region of our deltas that are ecologically and socio-economically crucially located for all of our societal benefits. And we recognize that, and we've seen in the previous 2 presentations and in all the talks with regards to sustainability that we really value this cruciality and this ecological place. And you see that in port developments, and I've taken here the example of the Maasvlakte 2 extension in Rotterdam. With these port developments like these, we take care for this environment. We do all sorts of environmental and social impact studies, and what you see over there is a suitcase full of these environmental studies that were carried out for the Maasvlakte 2 extension. So I would say, well done. But that's not it. Because when I look to this basket full, and I should have brought it, but it's way too heavy to take along with the plane all the way from the Netherlands. It's a basket full, all studies. You pick out one report, and there are really important ones, and really detailed ones also on the environmental effects. But what's striking is that none of these reports have looked at the potential positive impact of the Maasvlakte 2 extension to its surroundings and to its environments. All of them have been focused on minimizing negative effects. We are all about controlling the impact that we are having as an industry to our surroundings. But why can't we see that when we are developing ports, when we are doing a development in infrastructure, this is also an opportunity for our ecosystem and the socio-economic system around it. And that's the reason why we started as Van Oord. We are proud founding fathers of the EcoShape Consortium, in which we are looking to building with nature. We want to turn this around and make sure that nature is part of the developments that we are undertaking, and that we create opportunities for nature and socio-economic development alongside the infrastructure that we develop and create. And we do that under the name Building with Nature. So today I would like to talk to you what building with nature is, what nature-based solutions are, as this is the more common term in the world nowadays. And then I would like to apply this building with nature approach to ports. And I will highlight 2 very potential concepts that are in place: enriching port infrastructure and the beneficial use of sediment. So we see as a global trend that nature-based solutions are being embraced as a solution for the current crises that we're in, and then I mean the climate crisis, the biodiversity decline crisis, and we see that from the World Bank, either the UNEP, the IUCN, or more closer by to us ports, the PIANC, this nature-based concept is being embraced. And on a high level, investments and money has been made available for this nature-based direct implementation phase. And in upscaling these type of concepts, we still that it's really challenging. And why is that the case? And as EcoShape, we've been investigating that, and we've seen that these nature-based solutions that embrace nature as part of the solution, they have actually 4 main characteristics that are maybe withholding their application. And the one is that nature-based solutions are dynamic. Nature is dynamic. Natural dynamism is interesting, But of course, natural dynamism is also something, if you want to use it, you must have some sort of control on it. Next to that, nature-based solutions are always multifunctional. We are creating infrastructure that is not only fulfilling the function that we develop it for, but is also creating value as nature, or is creating value as a place to work, live, or visit. And when we want to be doing that, when we want to create this combined function and use these dynamics, then we must do something new. We must be innovative. And we must learn along the way how we can do that in this particular situation. And when I say this particular situation, it's actually the fourth characteristics. It's being context specific. A nature-based solution, as we have developed it in the Netherlands, for instance, we can't just take it up and apply it here in Colombia. The context of where you are placing this in, the systems that you operate in, must be understood, and therefore a nature-based solution is always context specific. And that requires quite a different approach to traditional infrastructure development. And this approach, that is what we call building with nature. So at the core of the building with nature approach, there are actually three sort of sides. The first one is, of course, a philosophy that you want to embrace all of these four characteristics that I just mentioned. You want to embrace that. You're not afraid that your solution is dynamic. You're loving it that it's dynamic. And it's beautiful, makes it a beautiful place to walk in, to appreciate it. Same goes for multifunctionality, innovativeness, and context specificness. It's something to be embraced, something to be proud of. So that must really be core of your philosophy. Then in the next step is, of course, in the design. You need to design infrastructure that needs to fulfill all these requirements. You need to do that different. You need to start from the system that you operate in, and you must be far more cyclical than using the traditional design approach, coming from a principle design, working towards an executional design. And then finally, in implementation, you see that this is not only about technology and system knowledge, but actually that the fact that you are creating all these multiple values, you also require multiple stakeholders that appreciate those values and that can help you in developing those. To deal with these dynamics, you must have another strategy of monitoring, management and maintenance that is far more adaptive to all this dynamism than maybe normal asset management strategies go about. And we are also facing institutional challenges, because actually in our rules and regulations, we also see that dealing with this dynamism and that having this control of multifunctionality is actually quite difficult. So institutional embedding is really important when you want to apply building with nature as well. Fifth, is the business case. When we are developing monofunctional infrastructure, then of course when we are bidding or tendering out for those type of infrastructures, it's the lowest price, the lowest cost to achieve that one function. That's of course the most economic advantage. However, when we are creating multifunctional integral solutions, then some alternatives might be more costly, but they create more added values. And potentially these added values can actually also chip into the development. Think of tourism, when we are creating new harbors and actually we can attract tourist activity towards that, maybe that tourist activity can chip in the cost of the harbor development in itself. And then finally, of course, these concepts are actually all quite new, and we must create the capacity and the understanding in a whole to be focused upon that. So we have been working quite hard to be working upon, and I'm very proud to also be the editor of this book on building with nature, in which we sort of highlight how you can do this and how you can implement all of these three stages on various landscapes with various building with nature concepts. But we've also in this book highlighted success stories of the pilot projects where we've executed that to make it really tangible and get that enthusiasm about. So today with you I want to looking more to the design approach. And as I've stated, the key of the building with nature design is that at the first and foremost you are looking to understand the system. And only from system understanding you can then identify what type of alternatives to be used, and then you can start to sort of evaluate each alternative and combine it together to come to an integral solution. And then of course it needs to be, you select one and you will refine it and you will start preparing it for implementation. And what you see then is, okay, I'm going to prepare it for a solution for implementation. I'm going to develop a new port, I'm going to build a new breakwater. But then I'm actually creating a new system, and I need to understand that new system. And then I need to identify alternatives, how I can improve that system. And then, you see that this cyclic process of building with nature design is acting. Because all of the time you can come from this system understanding and see how you can create additional added values and how you can work with those. So let's make it a little bit more concrete for ports, because we are here at the AAPA Latino, so we are talking about ports. From within the book, actually the port landscape we've been investigating as well. So I show you a couple of slides taken from that. So we start from this system. And then when we say the system, I'm not looking to the port in itself, but actually also looking to its surroundings. The city that lies behind it and the people that are living there, but also the natural areas that are adjacent to the port, maybe somewhat pushed aside, but they are still there. How are these systems functioning and how are these interacting? So we must be really analyzing that. And we must be really analyzing ecological benefits. How does this ecosystems work? What can live within the port, but also how does the port interact with the living creatures around the port? It's of course the interaction with the people that want to live nearby the port, that are working in the port, that want to visit the port. How does that interact with our interaction? And of course with resources, because natural resources, physical resources, for instance sediment, is a real important part in ports. We need to maintain our ports to depth, and with that we need to picking up materials. What are we going to do with those? Currently we're disposing them mostly offshore, but maybe we can do something else. And then finally it's the integrating of all of these three different type of layers and integrating the various stakeholders to join us in this development. So after we've analyzed this system, then you can come up with certain concepts that you can apply to certain pieces and parts of the port. And within the book we've highlighted quite a couple of them for the port ecosystem, but today I want to highlight only two, and that's about the enrichment of port infrastructure and the beneficial reuse of sediment. So enriching infrastructure, okay, what system are we in? What system are we going to make? You've all paid attention, despite this being one of the last talks of the day. So we know that is actually the case. But then of course we want to use building with nature principles to actually optimize that habitat that we are going to create. We are going to develop something and we're going to optimize that habitat. And this is actually an example as I've built it in the Eastern Scheldt, where we, in the foreshore of a dike, so that's a sort of a breakwater, we've actually also done that. And how do you do that? What we've done there is that we've placed additional materials there in specified constructions that were, and those constructions were really designed to create variation. Because what you see in ecosystems is that when you create variations, you create biodiversity. When you create biodiversity, you create added value. So we've really focused on this variation in shapes, and the type of texture of the materials that we used over there were really focused upon the key species that the diving community was looking after there, which were lobsters and sepias. And I can tell a very nice story. 4 years after we've developed this project, the World Underwater Photography Championships, it does exist, that came to the Netherlands and actually came to the exact spot where we've built this landscape underwater. And then indeed the winning photograph was one of these lobsters, and then the real big ones, and that was exactly where we designed these structures for. So really nice. The point that I want to make, so these building with nature principles you can use to apply and to create an optimized habitat. With nearly no additional efforts, you are creating additional habitat. But then of course, you want that it becomes an ecosystem. And then we have other opportunities at hand. We must actually generate life in this habitat to make it become an ecosystem. And whether that is coral reefs, as we have in this region, that you can create either sexually reproduced or with fragments, or whether it's oysters, mussels, or other reef-building shellfish, as we do that in the North Sea, or it's the outplanting or mangrove seagrasses. But for a system that you've just newly built, before it becoming a working ecosystem, life must be there. And then, of course, the main message is when we want to do this, when we want to achieve this, you have to do this all together with the stakeholders to also improve your social impact. So, and to show you proof of concept, I'm taking you, not that far from here, or at least from my perspective, not that far, to the Bahamas, where we've tested this with a coral engine. And what we did there is that we obtained corals either from fragmentation, so we've dived around the island to find coral fragments that were loosened already, and we've all collected them and placed them in a nursery. And next to that, we've been breeding new corals in our mobile coral laboratory, the Reef Guard system. And basically, how you breed corals, well, you start with the genetic materials. These are taken up, and then within laboratory facilities, we bring them together, grow new corals, let them sink on particular tiles, and then on these tiles, we put those in the nursery to let the corals grow out. And we've actually done that in the Bahamas alongside the project that we were executing there. And during two spawning events, we have collected genetic materials and made recruits. So these are on these very small 2 centimeter long tiles, and then there's a very small, very young coral, only 2 years old. And next to that, we had the fragments around them. And what we did is we placed all of these in a nursery along shore. And why, how did we do that? As stated, work together with the stakeholders. So we worked together with our client, the government, and they gave, of course, they took it as part of their social responsibility of their port development. We as contractors, we initiated this, the construction and the development, all of that. But of course we cooperated with the local NGOs, because actually they knew which coral types to go for. They knew where the best places were to harvest the genetic materials, so they really had the knowledge. And we worked together with the tourist sector, which of course saw that, say, after the corals are being developed, or actually during the development of these nurseries, these are attractive places for ecotourism. So you really see that working together with all of these stakeholders, that really started to create that added value and also create a continuity, because nowadays nurseries are still there, they are still producing corals, and under the auspicion of the NGOs and the tourism. So that was enriching in the infrastructure. Think about the quay walls, think about breakwaters that you can enrich. Another sort of basic building with nature concept that I like to explain to you is using sediment, beneficial reuse of sediment. And of course, the main idea all starts with that dredge materials, when we are doing maintenance dredge or capital dredging to extend ports or to keep ports to depth, we have a resource in hand. We don't have a waste product in hand that we need to sail out to the sea and dispose in a disposal facility far offshore. No, we have a resource in hand. And I'm fully aware that, say, in most of the legislations, placing the maintenance dredge materials is not directly there. So we should really work all together as a sector to sort of adapt legislation to become more favorable towards that. And also demonstrate that reusing these sediments, how that really benefits society and how that can best be done. Should we create new islands that you can visit? Should we create strengthened mangrove belts that are nearby? Or should we do something else altogether with these sediments, make building materials out of it? And of course, then when we've established that, then the main point comes, how do supply and demand of all these materials meet up? So that's what we're working at. And again, proof of concept, we've been working quite hard on it, and we actually have a number of examples in the Netherlands, but I want to highlight the mud motor, where we've worked together with the Port of Harlingen on a new disposal location for their sediments. It was located a little bit further, so they had to sail out a little bit further with the sediment in order to dispose it. And then the natural flows would take the sediments towards the salt marsh. So we've actually seen that salt marsh development close by in the area called Koehol was actually growing. And the nicest thing about this, it was actually the side benefit of this nature enhancement was that these sediments that were spread in this location, we've seen that about 80% of these sediments were actually going towards that salt marsh, and they were fixated then in that salt marsh. So they were no longer available in the water systems of the Wadden Sea, and actually sedimentation in the port of Harlingen reduced by this action. So we've seen less return flow towards the harbor of Harlingen, so that's a benefit in the longer term for their maintenance dredging as well. So currently in development, we are working here in Colombia in a Dutch-Colombian consortium together with Jessica, Arcadis, and all those others mentioned here. And we are actually identifying the opportunities for sediment reuse in all the port areas in Colombia. So whether that is mangrove restoration, building of islands, creating sand barriers, land reclamation, so we are really looking to the opportunities for the various ports. And we're also looking to what are actually the barriers for sediment reuse. And we've actually seen that in the legislative sphere, there are some barriers still. So we are really working that, how we can, what would better ways to navigate about that. And then we are highlighting potential options in Buenaventura specifically. So in conclusion, I hope that I have shown you today, with a couple of examples and with this philosophy of building with nature, that it is possible to create added value, and that creating or developing your port is actually an opportunity to also develop the ecological and the socio-economic systems for your neighborhoods. Starting from the system in which your port is operating is crucial in that. I think we've demonstrated that clearly. If you are working with sand as resources, you should find sandy solutions. With fine sediments, you should create other solutions. So I've particularly highlighted enrichment of port infrastructure, making small adjustments to the design that assures that you create added value, that you attract mussels, that you attract other animals or other ecosystems. You are creating that as part of your solution. You're not doing it additional to your solution, you're creating it as part of your solution. And then, of course, beneficial reuse of sediment, I've mentioned that as well. Using sediment as a resource when you are doing, for instance, maintenance dredging or capital dredging, you have a resource in your hands. And which we are currently treating and paying for actually to be treated it as waste. And that's, of course, a pity in itself, and there are plenty of opportunities to do something wiser with that. So I've also highlighted the book. If you have any interest, please contact me further. And with that, I would like to really thank you for this opportunity to provide you here with this talk and these opportunities. Thank you.
Almorcé con Erik, entonces ya.
Yes, I had lunch with Erik. Well,
Full presentation. Ya vamos cerrando APA.
okay, we are almost closing APA Latino 2021, and I really would like to thank this audience, because this panel started with 15 people after the vice president, and we can see now that we have a room full of people. Thank you very much. Thank you to your energy. You deserve a round of applause. Well, the applause is for you, and after these three excellent presentations, we are going to close with great news. We're bringing a Chilean friend with a great topic of a AMBIPAR response. So let's give him a round of applause. Let's give the floor to Patricio Montoya Sánchez, business manager of ICCS Institute, and he has a vast experience in the preparation of chemical emergency responses. So we're going to have a different approach on how to respond to these emergencies. And Patricio is the Chief Marine Service of Latin America, so you have a great responsibility. I mean, you're responsible for closing this event. So you have the floor, Patricio. Good afternoon. I'm going to cover a topic we've seen, circular economy. We have seen to build responsibly. There are many important topics in the maritime industry, in transport, logistics, and that sometimes we look to one side and we ignore it. So I'm going to make you nervous today. I'm going to show the reality that we live in logistics, the reality of what could happen in transport, the reality of what could happen in storage. There was a video, but I don't know what happened to the video. Okay, here's the video.
For alive. A is for animals, for the Amazon, for Antarctic. Remember, there is no planet B. AMBIPAR helps companies take care of planet A. AMBIPAR, leading environmental management.
Dice,
As they say, there is no planet B. Let's really look after planet A. Likewise, there's no B life. There's an A life of our workers, of our employees, of the people who are with us every day, of the environment. We are going to speak about risk analysis. When we analyze a risk, we look at it from the financial side, where we can take a look when we build a house. Let's go to the emergencies that we can encounter at a port. How do we measure the risk? We do it based on probability, consequence, threat, and perhaps vulnerability. There are many ways in which we can analyze risk. There's some latent risk, and sometimes we just do not see it. If we are in our ports, in our vehicles, in our vessels, and we see that there is a leak from a hose, we know that that hose is going to produce X cost, and that it is a minor problem, and sometimes we focus on the problems and risk that we have as a company. That is what we always do. So when you pass by, you just give to it certain importance, but there is a greater risk, and that is the risk. And when we say that's never going to happen to me, there's no likelihood that this is going to happen to me, but that risk becomes in emergencies, in catastrophes. When we analyze risk, for example, we go to our job, risk estimate amongst experts and amongst our peers, or just with ordinary people, it's not the same. It's not going to be agreed upon the same way. Some people can take a picture of a container. We all work with containers. We see that it's a hazardous cargo. But for some people, that it's underestimated. The cargo, is it well prepared? It's with the pellets. So sometimes we do not teach them about the risk of that cargo. And we do not assume the responsibility by saying this could result in an incident. It's not enough to say, I sell this product. We have to say that this product is going in a vessel with people on board. This product is going to be received in a port, it's going to be stored in a port, and it's going to be transported via the roads in the country. So how do we assume this responsibility? We have to educate. We have to explain to this person who doesn't have the knowledge, which is the risk estimate that he should take into account. Risk estimate says that it is based on perception, that most people have the perception that this is dangerous or not. Sadly enough, ladies and gentlemen, this perception doesn't exist. When we do not count on the proper education, this perception doesn't exist. When we really do not know what is it that we're facing, I insist on the fact that people respond to the risk perceived. If I stand on that edge, most likely I know that I'm going to fall. When we go into an environmental or a chemical emergency, all the members should know what are they facing in order to carry out a responsible work. That container could transform in this. A lousy risk analysis could end up intangible, real consequences. I mean, that's consequences to people, the environment, the company. How much does it cost for a person to take a picture of a container with a spill or with those vapors? And for a person to take a picture of this, and this picture, it becomes viral in the social networks. What's the impact on the company? If we remember what happened to credit cards after the emergency of Exxon Valdez, remember how stocks dropped, and just think about all the emergencies. There are even companies that disappear. Large companies that disappear because they do not have a control, they do not have a tough barrier. Sometimes they have soft barriers when dealing with risk prevention, with environmental emergencies. The barriers need to be hard, they need to be credible, they need to be targets that we must share with all the team. They need to be responsible. Our stakeholders, they are all affected by this. In the 2021 the World Economic Forum, there is a section that deals with the top of risk. Because there are many risks, probability, perception risk, but I just wanna see the probability. If we go from 2012 to 2021, we see how these colors have been changing. We started with different types of risk, but there is something that is repetitive, and that is since 2014, it increases, and then you start seeing all these green charts. We're all concerned about climate change. I think that it was yesterday that we saw the problems with wave heights. How is that changing, and how we need to be proactive and resilient, and how are we going to improve that? But there is a very important topic in 2021. And first, we have extreme climate, which has not changed since 2017. But in the third place, we have the environmental damage produced by humans. That is the environmental damage that we can cause because of lack of knowledge, environmental damage produced by being irresponsible, and the environmental damage in which we can be like passive accomplices. And when I speak about this is when we just ignore certain things, when we are not concerned about what really matters, how as a company, as a society, as a future, we can help lower this. If we are concerned of those in the first place, automatically, and take a look at this domino effect, we're going to start decreasing the probability in the second place, climate change, extreme climate, and we are going to constantly change this. I thought that by 2021, the fourth position was going to be the first one. I thought that the whole risk was going to focus on COVID, and no, that's not the case. So it's still there. So we should not be preoccupied about it. We should occupy ourselves about it. In the month of November in London, there was an important board, and from this, surprising data stemmed from this. And Brevin is their Fox risk director of IT Club. He said, if the activity continues operating the same way, and I'm referring to containers transport, you can have 1,000 TEUs or more undeclared containers on board of any ultra-large container ship. So we're talking of 24,000 TEUs. So in each of these journeys, we can have 1,000 TEUs, and of those 1,000 TEUs, around 10% of the cargo of all those containers on board contain hazardous cargo. So we see that 10%, 24,000 containers in this ship with hazardous cargo. We'll see what happens with hazardous cargo. But when we make mistakes, we find this news. It is estimated that around 5% of containers delivered with hazardous goods are not declared, given administrative mistakes, very little training, which has been very repetitive here. 5% of that cargo has not been declared, which means that we are facing an emergency about which we do not know anything. But it was also stated that it's not only because of people that is not well trained, or it's just people that deliberately didn't declare this because of dishonest carriers. At AMBIPAR, we see this, we find this, I mean, it's the different chain. Each one inherits 1 point from the previous one. So this usually is not from the origin. Usually the emergency is not from the origin. It happens in transport. It happens in the ports that we saw in the previous picture. And it happens also in ground transportation. So now let's go back to reality. Remember the sad event in the port of Beirut in 2020. 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate. It is a stable product. It is a product that if we maintain the right conditions, there should be no problem with that. There should not be problem with that. It is a hazardous cargo, but there should be no problem with that. Up to now, of this emergency, we have not been able to have like a final sentence. For example, the government of Lebanon committed to an investigation. 15 days after that happened, most advanced countries offered an investigation and it was not accepted. So up to now, we really do not know what happened. But those who are working on this, and we know about which could have been the chain of errors, we see that Customs has said that they had to remove this cargo, and they just didn't pay attention to this. Plus, workers were not informed about the problem with the cargo, so that results in the perfect storm. We had there ammonium nitrate. Perhaps there was an oil leak. You know, when we mix hydrocarbon, mainly diesel, with ammonium nitrate and a couple of more things, then we have AMFO, which was the result. 7,000 people were injured. 137 casualties, 300,000 people who needed to be, they moved from their city. There was this displacement. 10% of the households in Beirut, 10%, they suffered a lot of damages. And I'm not going to continue talking about the children that were orphans, like children that were left orphans without relatives just because we didn't pay attention to this problem. So $15 million for the recovery. That's the most important thing in order to speak about figures and to be nervous about it. 25% a 25% drop in Lebanon's GDP. Okay, so I mean, how many HMC cargo do we have in our ports? That's going to depend on the storage capacity. How many blends do we have with hazardous product? Or I'm going to turn this question around. What happens if we are positive that of all those products, when we have them there blended or mixed, we do not have a hazardous problem? Are we really prepared as a port, as shippers, to what could eventually happen? I think that these are questions that I'm just asking if we are prepared for what could happen. If we work on risk management, if we have an operational control, if we have preventive actions, if we have good insurance coverages, so the more prevention we have, the more possibility we have to negotiate with insurance companies to reduce the premiums. The more we are concerned about it, less effects we're going to have in the port community and in the community outside the port and our neighbors, and we are going to be able to have a continuity in our operations. Here we have our incident with hazardous material. If we set the right barriers, obviously this is going to drop. If we become reactive, the first minutes of an emergency really make a difference between an initial incident and a catastrophe. So we can continue reducing this. Analyzing this risk in an effective manner, it reduces the likelihood of going from an accident to a huge accident. The initial reactions are always going to change from an incident to a huge emergency or even to a catastrophe. It depends on us. It depends on us to have just incidents. Hopefully it will never happen, but that's something that we cannot guarantee. But we do need to be prepared. If we put in place initial actions, today we saw videos of ports with brigades, firemen, recovery of men in the water. We saw a video from a port. So if we put in place these actions, we are going to avoid environmental damage, to human beings, and we can guarantee continuity in the operation. And this message, it's better to be prepared for something that that will never happen than just having something for which we are not prepared. Chileans learned in 2010, and today we are prepared. Thank you very much.
Bueno, muy bien. Reglas claras, protocolos.
Very well, clear rules, strict protocols, awareness of our environment, control, planning, diversification of cargo, and better use of natural resources. We saw with Celeste, building with nature, building within a framework with social influence, and with Patricio, training, risk management, and being prepared for something that will never happen. With this, we thank Celeste, Domingo, Erik, and Patricio, and to you for having the best energy. We're closing APA. Thank you very much.